welcome everybody. I know I missed September, so I got to make up Dynamo NEXT episode twice this month. So this one's going to go by pretty fast. Flux is, I wouldn't even say it's a two-part series. This could be like a 10-part series because this is such an amazing kind of add-on for really anything, Grasshopper, Dynamo, Revit, 3ds Max. I think they've got a ton of programs covered. They even have things like Excel plugins covered. So just an amazing online tool. We'll go over it in just a second here. But I entitled it Flux Back to the Future. Gautam Shenoy once asked me if I was working on a flux capacitor for Revit. Luckily, I didn't have to because somebody else is working on it for me. But it's a 1980s Back to the Future movie reference. So that's what I entitled episode 6 today. So before we get started, the usual disclaimer. I think most of you are used to this, but if you're new to Dynamo NEXT, it should be kind of over your lunch hour, taking a late lunch. I've got Jimmy John's next to me right now, and either stay a half hour late or do this over lunch, or just don't put any general time down, and don't miss any deadlines just on this behalf. So what is Flux? All right, it says what the Flux, so we're gonna go with it. I thought I'd put what is Flux, but hey, what the Flux. So Flux.io is it's a Google X spinoff, if you will. I was just talking with Thomas out of their San Francisco office just last month. He had a lot of great things to say about Flux, the things they're working on. Michael, their CTO, won a tablet from me back in August at Data Day in Toronto, so really friendly with them. Great group, guys and girls and professionals. So they were created to basically completely change the game and in an open, inexpensive platform that allows all members of the building making community to share data. So they want to create kind of a common data environment, if you will, so we can have some interoperability between our programs. I think I was quoted in a prior Dynamo NEXT as data and the new designer's toolkit. But I always kind of emphasize this, especially since I kind of made this show, data is the new designer's toolkit. I'm quoted as saying, what is it, the leaders of the future will be the movers of data that create enhanced architectural space. So just kind of thinking about data in a different way and how we create with it. So what we're going to learn today, again, this is going to be a little bit shorter episode. We're not going to take the full hour. Just because there's a lot of stuff we can cover, and I'm only going to cover one tiny little thing that they can do. But some of it is just asking the question to reevaluate how you work, how you think you should be working, whether we should even be modeling things anymore, or we should just be moving data. So it's just a question I want to throw out there. We're going to learn about interoperability, just a little bit of what it's going to take to get something from Revit, push it to the cloud, change it on the cloud, and then push it back into Revit. And then quickly do some site test fits. And I found a new little app that they have that I think AREP made to do distance twos, sort of heat maps for travel distances to buildings. So this will all be in the kind of PD/SD phase. And so that first one, reevaluate how you work. I really want to hit this one a little bit harder than all the others, and we'll get into our demo. But I always go through a kind of an agonizing process of reevaluating my skills, the workflow, the process that I use, and change everything just constantly. I used to do it every 3 or 4 years, just completely revamp all my skills from the ground up and change everything to really make everything better than the stuff I did last month or last year. It can be painful to learn a new process, but it's necessary if you're the type of person that learns to keep learning. So that's what I hope we do here at DLR Group, is to learn to keep learning. So with that, let's jump into a demo here. Make sure that I'm in a blank Revit file before we ever really do anything. I think I've shown this before, kind of this, we had Kyle Martin come in once, but he gave a totally different presentation. So I'm actually going to go in here and kind of revamp one of his scripts that we used and build a school that we have.
Hey, Ryan.
Yep.
You are recording this, right? There's a question about that.
Oh yes, yep. It's being recorded.
Okay.
I've already hit record. So with Revit 2017, we've got the Dynamo player. I don't actually have to load Dynamo anymore. I just open up the player, find the folder with my scripts in it, run the script that I want. I didn't open this Excel file. It opened it for me. It found it on the server. So there's obviously huge time savings, but really there's frustration savings there, because now I don't have to go on the server. Dynamo just finds it for me. It's always kind of been able to do that. But if you take a look, it's literally going to go through and build all these rooms for me based on the parameters I've set. And then it's going to categorize them by color, because I've determined that with my group of people, or the owner has specified that in some way. Let me scroll back over here. So let's say like workroom, department admin, and it's going to come out as 10 by 15. I guess it's going to have a 15-foot ceiling in there, whatever. Should be 9 or 10, but we can go ahead and change that later. And basically, it's going to build all these little rooms for me. And while it's doing that, let me jump into Flux and kind of give a little quick demo for that. Minimize this just a second. So if you go to Flux.io, you basically come to this dashboard right here. And like I said, while that's building something, I'll kind of give a little demo of something I found interesting the other day, which was the Smart Space Analyzer. So let's say I wanted to find a distance to certain points in a building. Oh, it did find it today, because earlier it took me to Seattle. Let's go to Seattle here. Now I'm going to just kind of ballpark where our office is in Seattle. It's somewhere in this area. I'm just going to go to basically Google Maps here. Zoom in. Yeah, we're in here somewhere. I might be wrong, but we're in this box somewhere. And I want to know how far, see how big I can make this before it errors out. Okay, if it goes red, it's kind of errored out. If I want to add a target real quick, let's say I want to check distance, just see kind of a heat map of distance traveled. Give me a second here, my mouse is crapping out on me. From this building right here to Seattle Library. And my mouse is crapping out on me. 1 second here. Do a quick analysis of that. Let this app on Flux kind of develop a heat map for me. You can start to see it's already figuring out where the buildings are adjacent to these 2 points, figuring out kind of a travel path for me. And it's going to say, hey, this is 660 meters, something like that, 442 meters, whatever. If I were to start at this point, I could be, let's see, I could be to this point. Oh, let me scoot this off to the side. I knew it was going to be a problem if I got a tiny screen. And I can start to see different travel distances between 2 points. Essentially, the farther I get away from that building, the more red things become. The closer I get to my 2 points, essentially the closer I am to that building. Pretty common sense stuff. They're also working on a couple different route analysis tools. So this is really interesting. If you were to start to figure out what your client wanted in terms of amenities nearby. Let's say I was doing a hotel, a hotel would be a good example, and I wanted to stay there, but I wanted to know what amenities were nearby. Well, prior to ever picking a site, you can kind of go on here and start to figure out, oh, hey, give me a list of all the restaurants nearby. Give me a list of all the coffee shops nearby. Give me a list of all the XYZ nearby, and then start doing heat maps of distances to those points. And then you start to build kind of a database catalog, if you will, of finding the right site for your client based on certain parameters. You could even base it on drive distances that the employees would have to take from their homes. If that's an important thing to the client, I think we can do that now with the tools that are out there. Okay, so close that. We can save that out and do all kinds of fun stuff, but let's go check our model here. Okay, excellent. Now it's built me my school, right? That's always kind of fun. Let's scoot this off to the side here. Why not? Bear with me here. My mouse batteries are about to die. Go ahead and look at that. So it's basically come in here and said, hey, you're 12 by 10 by 10. your admin, your reception room. So you go in a certain row here because you fit into a certain category. Obviously, there's my gymnasium, there's the kitchen equipment, those kind of things. A lot of fun and interesting stuff. Let me jump back to my Dynamo player here. Next thing I want to do is basically run an algorithm that says, hey, you guys are close to each other, so I want you to group yourselves according to your adjacencies. This is going to be tough. Here we go. Okay, so pull those all next to each other. Let's take a look at what we have. I'm still working on this a little bit, but essentially you can kind of start to see a school come together, right? Oop, hold on. Yellow being circulation, green being admin, classroom department is the cyan you're seeing there. Still working on how to figure out circulation. I might end up doing it a totally different way because it'll just be a little bit faster. I won't have to do any of this kind of modeling because it's kind of stupid. I already have my school here. I don't need it. I don't need to spend hours modeling anymore. Should I need to swap it out in some other way? And then what this script, I'm not going to run this next script, but once it gets set, basically we've already got all these things modeled. So we can, let me give an example here. What this script does is grabs all these rooms and then throws our basic template, if you will, group into that and overlays it. You know what, I'm just going to run it anyway. It takes a good 30 seconds or something to build a school. I mean, that's what it takes us now, right? So this kind of idea could be applied to just about any type of our projects if we needed to do a quick test fit. So we're going to let this run for just a second here as it starts to build that school. And so boom, I didn't have to model anything. Again, a lot more tweaking of the script, and we can build a school substantially faster or a hotel faster, those kind of things. Like I said, it's a little bit rough right now. But the advantage is once that dust is kind of settled and I have this all figured out, it's going to be a lot easier to start off on the right foot. So basically the schedule is all filled out with our templated wall-based 1, RB1 in this case. We've got a cost associated with all those items. We've got departments. We've got our typical comments already covered for all those rooms. Let me minimize Dynamo player here. And if the mouse is going to work with me. Floor finish is already called out. The room finish schedule is already done, at least again from a templated standpoint. You don't have to go in now and do all this manually because that's kind of a waste of our time when we can have it done already. And now that you've saved 7 or so hours, possibly more, you can actually go back and design and change all those paints because now you have 7 more hours to actually do design. Which is really tremendously helpful. So that's kind of the starting point. Ideally, let me backtrack just a little bit here. Perfect. Before we ever even get to that level, we want to do a couple site test fits, if you will. And I need to get closer to the screen, I think, because my mouse is giving out. All right, so real quick, I'm actually just going to move this up. If it lets me here. Move this up. I'm going to slam this over here somewhere so we can kind of go through the video example that I sent out earlier. All right. Chrome here real quick. Let's go ahead and launch this. Oh, and I'll give a practical example after all this is said and done. Oh, such a tiny screen. Oh, this is a ton of fun, but such a tiny screen right now. So let's go ahead and look at, this is near our OPK office, just because I like to pick out DLR offices. We were at Seattle earlier, we'll be at OPK right now. Let's say I wanted to throw a school maybe over in this area right here, and I wanted to get a test fit. I'm not saying that you would put a school right here, but just as an example. So I'm going to need to grab all this data. How long would it take? Swan, you were in college at UNL. How long would it take to do like a site map? Getting all the contours, getting all the roads, getting all the buildings, quote unquote, drafting it in CAD or Revit or something stupid.
A week or two, a couple weeks maybe.
A couple weeks maybe, usually 2 or 3 people, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of super annoying to have to do that. I can make a whole new one where we just go to this one. I think I've already done this, haven't I? Let me go into that app. Launch my flow. Let's close that. Okay. Export that. So it's going to grab all this data for me. It's going to pull it from OpenStreetMap or another database, depending on what information is filled in on that. In this case, it'll be the OPK DLR group headquarters, all the other buildings associated with that, all the buildings on Metcalf that are between 137th and 132nd-ish. Any residential, it'll give me the names of those businesses if they've been uploaded to OpenStreetMap. So it's going to give me a ton of data, a ton of very valuable data. Excellent. Now go to that project. So I want to see it in raw format. There we go. So in just a couple moments here, it's pulled all that. It's stripped all that data out of that area, and it's basically said, I've asked it to give me the contour lines, roads, building footprints. I can turn those on and off. It's color coded them for me, and then in about 60 seconds, I'll show you how to download that to Dynamo, push into Revit. Kind of automates that process. You know, something that took a long time of mostly frustration. It's not that we can't do it. We just want to get to this point faster. Sorry, let me grab some water here. So that we can get to our building much sooner. So now that we have this loaded, I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to open up Dynamo real quick. Which probably should have had open to begin with, but you can't have Dynamo Player and Dynamo open at the same time. Where did I grab that from? Give me 1 second. Let me jog my memory. I'm not running like at 100% right now, by the way. Should be able to pull it into this. Okay, here we go. Yeah. I want to grab that element geometry. Oh, tiny screen. Okay, run. Give me just a second. Let me run this program. And what it should be doing is, I think it's actually going to make those groups again, but it's also going to give me the element geometry of those color-coded blocks that I had Revit or Dynamo basically model for me, because I don't want to have to model all that stuff. I don't want to have to organize it. I want to tell the computer how to do it, and then be able to have different modules, different versions of that. So if I want to organize it by certain adjacencies, version 1, I can. If that needs to change, I can do adjacencies version 2, or I can organize it a different way. If we think in modules, instead of how many hours is it going to take for Ryan or Matt or Andrew to create that layout, then we're going to get kind of caught up in basically doing a lot of work that could be done in a much faster, more reliable way. Let's see if I broke this yet. I think I did. Going for the test print. Oops. No, that should have grabbed it all, because then they gave me the element. I bet it's because I remoted in. So they're there, you just can't see them. Yeah, okay, so it did grab them. And it's because I remoted in. Fair enough. Let me scoot this back over. Scroll back up. Building footprint test. Close that. Question might be, oh, there it is. There's my school. Fully fitted into the site. I need to take it down just a little bit, but we can start to essentially get an idea for the size of that school. Now, I know it's not the correct size because I don't have that thing totally worked out, but assuming you did have all that programmatic development up first, which of course comes from the client to begin with, we wouldn't have to put hardly any work into that. Run the 2 or 3 scripts and then get that building footprint. I can already start to get kind of sight lines. I can already start to see what else is going on throughout here, adjacencies of buildings, how close I am to the streets, to the off-ramps, exits. I can start to get all kinds of information right away. I mean, this is pretty fast, right, Salim?
Yeah.
Yeah. So otherwise, you're talking about a team of people trying to do this in, you know, what, weeks worth of time. So hopefully there's some advantages that people can see to use this on. Some other advantages that I found that are interesting. Here's kind of a pre-baked project. Going in and grabbing, I renamed this project so that it's not quite as known, but you can go in here and actually kind of dive into what this data is telling you. So this is another project that I'm not going to release what it is, but it's going to give me all this information from OpenStreetMap. So that's what this information looks like. All these different lines, all these different buildings. If I were to look at that as raw data, that's what, these are the points and these are the polylines that compose what you're visually seeing. So I always like to kind of like look behind the mirror or look behind the curtain a little bit, if you will. So if we scroll down here, we can start to see, what are we down to, like the 6th or 7th? Let's say we're down to the, I think we're down to like the 7th building here, if you will. So, dang it, can I zoom out a little bit? Okay, here we go. Now everybody can kind of see that. So I can start to separate out my contour map, if you will. I can start to separate out all the buildings on that site. I can isolate certain buildings on that site. So if I need to know something about that building, let's say that's a existing school, or let's say that's where I want to put my school, I can have this program essentially do a 200-meter sweep or a 200-yard sweep and check for liquor stores around that exact point and say, are there any liquor stores in between that? And if I basically run a script, let's say, what's the 8th, 9th, 10th building around here? Let's move this little borderline point. Let's look at this building. Let's go back to the 7th building. And basically it'll come up and say, hey, I found something. Mara Restaurant, they serve alcohol. So can you use that next to a school? You know, I'm just using that as an example. But we're able to kind of cipher through all this data extremely fast. And in fact, it's not about the speed, but now we've opened up Pandora's box here a little bit to allow us to see things that we weren't able to see and that we were never going to see using our kind of old process of, you know, we didn't have an old process for this, right? it's a game changer. I guess that's kind of the difference. And so it's going to go back in and tell me every single building, lengths, widths, heights, areas, and even more. I mean, I've kind of filtered it down to just this data, but if you look at it a little bit deeper, you can start to see what's going on all these different sites. And really, I think that's about all I have for today. Open it up for questions. I know it's kind of a lot in a really short amount of time, but yeah, it's a really short episode today, but kind of open it up for questions for anybody.
Ryan, can you explain again how this connects between Dynamo and Revit? I don't think I quite got that because you pulled up the Google Maps and you were working with this tool within Google Maps and then you were able to pull it down into the other tools. Can you go over that again?
Absolutely. I did skip over that. So yes, I went over it in the video link that I sent out to everybody, but no, good catch. This is the brains of the operation here. So basically you have to have Flux installed for Dynamo, which is available in the packages. It didn't used to be available in the packages, in the package manager. But basically you go in here, type in Flux, download this Flux.io add-in, and then it'll ask you to create a user ID, password, those kind of things. And then once you do that, it's going to open up a couple different little packages here, a couple different nodes. You just type in Flux. You're going to have your flow control, meaning do I want to continuously send this data, or do I just want to do it once and then stop? I tend to default to constantly, but you don't have to. Then there's the actual Flux project. So let's say you had 2, 3, 4 projects up on Flux. You got to be able to figure out which one it is that you want to pull from. So I've got a couple different examples here that I would pull from. And it doesn't have to be building information. It could be like Excel data, right? It could just be like numbers and even letters or Booleans that I need to use maybe in a different script. So basically you're saying I want to pull from that project. I want to send that information up to Flux. Bing, bing. I want to do it constantly, continuously. And then the value is whatever geometry you're sending up, or on it, again, honestly, any numbers. You could technically throw Excel up through Dynamo to Flux, although they do have an Excel add-in that works the same way as this. Basically grab this geometry, throw it into it. And so all these little cubes, now it's showing as dots on my screen, but I have a feeling it's because I'm remoted into my computer. There are blocks here, and again, if you watch the pre-recorded video, it's a bunch of gray boxes of that school. Then it throws it up to Flux. That's how it works. It creates this little piece of data right here. Tells me a little bit more about it, how big of a file it is, who made it last time. Amazing stuff. And if I ever need to, if I break it, I know a lot of people are scared to test new things because they might break something. Like if I break it, I just go into Flux Capacitor and say, I want to restore back to version 10 from 2 days ago. Click, flip it through, and then you can go back to that version. So we could probably use that to our advantage for design options, I guess, because you could always say, I want version from that day or this day or those days, or I want to blend 2 different versions from 2 different days. That would be pretty incredible. And then that's it, boom. It's just simple as dragging and dropping. I think everybody saw that. Here, let me do it again. I'm literally just dragging and dropping the information onto it. It's so easy. It's just boom. It's just crazy, right? So if I wanted, I think I already have roads on here, but if I wanted to show the parks nearby, if I wanted to show restaurants nearby, water features nearby, water not meaning water lines, water meaning like creeks and rivers and those kind of things. So boom, you see it pop up there? Oh, probably can't put the school there. It's got a river running through it. But again, I think you guys get the point. Like this is insanely fast and insanely accurate. And if I wanted to pull this in, tell you what, receive from Flux. And I need to learn how to spell first. Boom. So let's grab that information. Give 2 seconds. Oh wait, I'll have to run it again. Receive all the information from prototype test fit 2. Boom, hey, there it goes. Okay, sweet. I'm not even gonna disseminate which values I want here. Oh, maybe I should. Let's look at just the topo mesh. If you got something in Dynamo that you want to test fit at the site, I mean, it's pretty universal. I can do this on Google Chrome in the browser. I can do this I can pull this data right into Revit. It's a little rough pulling like a topographic map into Revit. And it's not a size thing, it's not a file size thing, it's a resolution thing, if you will. Revit's not really great at handling curvy lines at that scale and at that level. What did I do? Oh, there it is, yeah. Oh, and I pulled topographic map, not contours, sorry. But I went ahead and pulled in the full 3D topographic, so it is technically the contours, but I could go out and 3D print that. I mean, basically sat file that real quick using a Dynamo node and poof, out to 3D printer, and I've got my site. I mean, this is light years ahead of anything I did in college. Now, granted, I graduated college a while ago, but still, this is, I would have loved to have had this even 3-4 years ago. Let's get the contours going. Let me run that real quick. I mean, just to be able to like grab this data is amazing. Yeah, sweet. Let me zoom in up just a little bit here. So Dynamo can handle this a little bit better than Revit can. But once again, if I needed to toss this into my Revit model, I could. Just manage your expectations, because Revit's kind of an older software that is going to not play well with all these lines, if you will. I think we all know that. I think we've all accidentally imported a CAD file before. It's going to kind of mess with it. So, any other questions? If anybody wants kind of a more private one-on-one session, I am doing one for the Kansas City office next Friday. They kind of asked to do kind of a beginner's course, if you will. So if there's any office that wants to see, they absolutely have to see it, do this, or this, just let me know. I can put something together and we can go over it over lunch. Because this software, this computational design thing, this data thing, this parametric thing, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely astonishing. It absolutely changes everything. Okay, if there's no other questions, that's it. Nice half-hour session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.